Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today, we're bookworms here on the Battleship. As historians, we read a tremendous amount, and it's interesting having that kind of connection with the ship's crew, who always had access to literature, always had the ability to read on board throughout the ship's entire career, even dating back to World War II. As originally built, Battleship New Jersey had a library on board on the main deck inside the superstructure on the port side. It would have been approximately the same footprint as the space that we're in today. By the 1980s, all four Iowas had transitioned their libraries from up on the main deck, spaces that get converted into berthing compartments, down here to second deck, just aft of the mess deck. Originally, this would have been additional mess deck seating, but as the crew contracted, it was no longer needed for that. On Iowa and New Jersey, the library is here on the starboard side of the ship, but on Missouri and Wisconsin, it's on the port side.
Hi, my name is Keith Nitka. I'm the Battleship Operations Manager on board Battleship Wisconsin. And I was asked to give my input as to whether or not I believe it's pronounced Missouri or Missouri. And I look at Missouri. That's me, Missouri.
Where the ship's store is. So for whatever reason, those two spaces flip-flop depending on the ship. No two Iowa-class battleships are anywhere close to being identical. You can always tell them apart. Once upon a time, the books in the library were the main form of personal entertainment on the ship. The battleship has always carried about 6,000 volumes like the ones you see in this room today. We don't have any of the battleship's original books that were carried on board, or even a list of them. However, the books you see in this space are books primarily on naval history that have been donated to the museum over time. And so, since we have this ready-made storage space on board, they've been brought to the library to live. These books are also available to the general public. The door to the library is wide open, so folks can come in and read them at their leisure while they're on the tour. It's also one of the spaces where you can sit down while you're here. The space, as you see it today on New Jersey, looks nothing like it would have for the rest of the ship's career. In fact, we've got zero photography showing this space in this configuration, no blueprints that show it like this. We just know it's supposed to look like this because this is how we got the ship, with the tables built into the floor and these chairs in this room and these shelves in the positions that they are in. Earlier, it seems like more industrial-style metal bookcases. I'll show you the type later on. However, it seems like, I think this only happened on New Jersey, probably because we were in commission the longest in the 1980s, and therefore our welfare and morale fund had built up the most money, and so they chose to spend it to update this space with the fancy style bookcases and tables and chairs and whatnot that you see today that are not necessarily Navy standard, don't really look like other time periods you would have seen on this ship. The Navy has an organization that manages libraries, and they're the ones that acquire the books and then distribute them out to ships in the fleet. However, on the individual ships, it is the ship's chaplains that are in charge of welfare and morale, and therefore spaces like the TV studio and the library. So on Battleship New Jersey, at least by the 1980s, the ship's two chaplains' offices are here in the library. We would have carried two chaplains, so there's an office over there, and then this one that's actually been interpreted. Typically, these chaplains would have been a Catholic and a Protestant chaplain, although it varies over time, and you could see things like Jewish rabbis or other denominations in that chaplain position. While Battleship New Jersey always had chaplains assigned that would have run the ship's welfare and morale fund, other ships that are smaller might only have a chaplain who's managing the entire division, and they'll have one of their other officers fill in that welfare and morale fund. Now, Battleship New Jersey no longer has a welfare and morale fund. We've been decommissioned since 1991. But the submarine USS New Jersey, SSN 796, does, and by contributing to their welfare and morale fund, it allows them to update spaces on their boat to be unique from other Virginias, much like New Jersey's library is unique from other Iowas. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to buy SSN 796 merchandise from Battleship New Jersey's museum store, the proceeds from which go back to the Welfare and Morale Fund of the submarine. Now, these books here in the library are for entertainment purposes. This is those sorts of books that you would read for fun in your free time. However, the ship's library is not the only library on the ship, and there are other books on board, so many books. Let's go check out one of those other spaces. In addition to the ship's library, there were technical publication libraries run by each of the divisions on board that were scattered around the ship. Most of these were comparably smaller spaces, oftentimes in a former 40mm magazine or something like that. I'm not quite sure where these sorts of tech pubs would have lived during World War II, say. That might have been in various ships' offices. Many of the divisions had their own offices. For example, the engineering department had the log office. Each of the gunnery divisions had an office space. Or they might have just been in shelves in those spaces. The turrets actually have, in some cases, small bookshelves in them. So some of these pubs could have been stored there. Very few of those spaces still had their original books in them when we got the ship. Some do, and some of them still do because we haven't had the wherewithal to pull it all out of its context and bring it up here. But this space is one that we've converted for all the tech pubs that we've acquired. Either they were on the ship, having been piled up somewhere during decommissioning, or are things that have been donated that relate to the ship or the ship's various systems, things that had been taken home by crew members or found elsewhere. And these are the sorts of manuals that go with all of the various systems on the ship. And in some cases, they're log books as well. For example, this space is where we found the logs of all the small arms on board. But the majority of these are like the big manuals. How do you use a 600-pound steam plant? How do you use a 16-inch gun turret? The sorts of things that the crew would be referencing, especially in the 1980s when no other systems like this were in use, not only in the U.S. Navy, but like anywhere else in the world. So they're referencing these old manuals to figure out how to learn their systems, how to maintain their systems, things like that. And in many cases, these are huge stacks of binders. A big binder might just be one or a couple of chapters on each individual thing. And these types of metal shelves that you see these books on are more like the type that would have originally been in the ship's library before they got replaced with the fancy stuff, thanks to the Welfare and Morale Fund of the ship. So those are some of the many library spaces on board an Iowa-class battleship. What is your favorite book? Let us know in the comment section down below. Lately, I've been rereading Neptune's Inferno by James Hornfisher about the naval battles around Guadalcanal. But my favorite book right now is probably The Great Pacific War by Hector Charles Bywater, which was a 1920s written book on what a future Pacific War might look like between the United States and Japan. It's interesting reading what was essentially Great Depression era Tom Clancy to see what he got right and what he didn't. I think I like it a lot because it's before aircraft carriers become predominant, so there's still a lot of battleship on battleship action in it. But let us know your favorites in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourself. So we really appreciate your support. Remember, there's a link in the description below to the ship's store where you can buy Submarine New Jersey stuff to support their Welfare and Morale Fund. You can support Battleship New Jersey by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.